What's going on, y'all? It is Copizzle. So I wanted to try to incorporate some type of podcasting here on my channel. That was, a lot of my content here on YouTube is a short formatted, videos. Obviously, I'm in all of my videos, and that's the way I like doing YouTube. But I wanted to bring in maybe um, a long formatted version of content for those that want it. For those that want to hear more or get more content in more of a not such a fast pace, more of a slower version of what I of storytelling and things that interest me when it comes to the New York Football Giants. So I decided to bring this to my channel, and to me, that the most perfect topic to start this whole deal off would be the question that I get so much. Or I've got it so much over the last decade that I figured I would finally just sit down and take the time and really address this topic. And the question I've been given a lot is, how did you, Copizzle, become a New York Giants fan? Obviously, there's a Southern accent there, and a lot of people don't get it. It doesn't make a lot of sense to people, and so I figured, what? Why not? Let's do. Let's kind of tell the story from the beginning, and for those that want to hear it, or for those that are interested in it, then you'll enjoy this. So, two things that I can honestly sit here and say that have always been a part of my life. And some of you may think badly of me on this, but the two things that I can honestly say that that's always been part of my life is the New York Giants and gambling. Those two things have always been a part. I don't remember a time in my life, honestly, I don't remember a time in my life that I wasn't rooting on the New York Giants. And I also don't remember a time in my life where gambling wasn't a part of my life. And the funny thing is in a lot of ways, gambling helped me plant the seed of being a New York Giants fan. So, obviously, I was born and raised in Nashville, Tennessee. Um, I've lived in the area or in the region most of my life. Um, During the early '90s, late '80s, when I started to have interest in sports or even football, Nashville didn't even have a team. There was no Tennessee Titans. There was I'm actually old enough to remember the Houston Oilers, um, and really, when you grow up in this area or this region, the SEC is probably more, I mean, just as popular, if not more popular than the NFL. Sports teams, as the years have went on, sports teams have obviously grown more and more in this region of the country. But there was a time when Nashville, or even the state of Tennessee, because even the Grizzlies, right, moved here from Vancouver, and obviously the Oilers moved to Nashville. But there was a time when we didn't have any sports teams here, so it's easy for you to sit here and poke at me now. But you have to understand that when I was a kid, I wanted to have a favorite team. I wanted to experience the same thing that other people were experiencing in other regions of the country. Now, I never really fell in love with college football as much as I did pro football, but we'll get on to how the Giants really became about. So, my dad or he's still with us. He's had some real tough health scares over the years, and the funny thing is my dad would be, if the world knew who my dad was, they'd love him. They would absolutely love him. I mean, he is a wild man, beer drinking, true Marlboro man. I mean, if you enjoy Copizzle or you think I've got personality, then you would love my dad. But anyways, my dad introduced me to a lot of different sports, and one of them obviously being football. My dad has always been a gambler. And the reason why I say gambling has always been part of my life because I've always been around my dad, and he's done a lot of gambling. And a matter of fact, we used to spend a lot of time in Florida, and we would spend a lot of time at greyhound tracks, dog tracks. Most notably, one in just outside of Panama City called Ebro Greyhound Park, which I believe is closed now because they just recently banned greyhound racing in Florida. But we also spent some time in Birmingham, Alabama, track there, and later in life now he has grown interest into horse racing with me. So, but anyways, I spent most of my time as a kid during the summertime with my dad at greyhound tracks. And so, anyways, as it connects with the Giants, so I'm 4 or 5 years old. The Giants are making a great run into the playoffs, and this is 1990. And my dad just kept betting on the Giants. I mean, was betting them every playoff game. And looking back, I don't even remember what the spread was on any of these games. I had no clue. I honestly didn't understand even at that time I understood gambling, but I didn't know everything. I will say this. I knew how, before I even entered first or second grade, I knew what a trifecta was before I could even spell trifecta. But as far as sports betting, obviously most of that stuff was illegal, and my dad was doing some really shady business. But nevertheless, I assumed that my dad was a kind of a Giants fan. So in some ways, I was tricked. The Giants ended up going to the Super Bowl, and I know they were underdogs against the Buffalo Bills, Super Bowl 25. And my dad was going to go to a Super Bowl party. He was going to go to a Super Bowl party with some of his friends. Now, I'm probably roughly the age that I am now is probably the age my dad was during this time, mid-30s. And I have 2 kids of my own, and so I love my kids. I love being around them, but if I'm going to go gamble with my friends and just watch a game, the last thing I want is my kid with me. I know that sounds terrible, but looking back on it, I begged my dad to let me go with him. I wanted to go. I wanted to watch the game with my dad. I wanted to watch the Giants. Not that I couldn't watch it at home, but I wanted to be with my dad. And I wanted to be with some of his friends. And my dad had some real rough redneck friends. I mean, some wild guys. And so I honestly had no business being there. I just didn't. I know I didn't. But my dad let me go, and looking back on it too, I could have seen where my dad would have thought that, maybe I'd been a little bit of a party pooper kind of deal, kind of ruined it. How could you bring your kid, to we're drinking, all this and stuff. So, but looking back on it, it really means a lot to me that my dad let me go. So, Super Bowl 25 happens. All of my dad's friends, all of them, just like anybody's would now, they're all on the Giants. They've all bet the same, and I'm sure they took the points. And of course the Giants win. And so I'm seeing my dad and all his friends. They're celebrating. They're having fun. And I just thought that's just what you do. You root for the New York Giants. And a lot of the players on the team at that time, I as a kid, I kind of instantly fell in love with. My dad was very much a Bill Parcells kind of guy. He would have, today if there was a Bill Parcells, which there's really not, but if there was, my dad would be all about him. I think that's honestly why my dad liked that team or betting on that team was because of Bill Parcells. I've never really asked him about it, but that's just my opinion. That's just what I think. So the interesting part is that's where the seed got planted. Now here's where even looking back in life that I can't believe this thing continued. So obviously Giants go through we go through an off season and the season comes back around and I guess at this time I'm 6. I know this is going to sound crazy, but we were actually lucky enough to have a computer at our house. I know some of you may be baffled by that, but early 90s, not every household had a computer. I guess that makes me, looking back on it, I guess I was privileged in that sense. We didn't have, I would argue that my parents were raised both me and my brother as middle class. I wouldn't say we were poor, and I definitely won't say we were ever rich. Just middle class. Both of my parents were hard workers. And the computer just so happened to be in my room, which later in life ended up being a terrible idea. That's for a different story, though. But I figured out how to kind of work it, 6, 7 years old, kind of have the idea of what I needed to do and all this and that. And we used to get the newspaper a lot. And for me, that's where I was, the seed had been planted about the Giants. The name had stuck with me, New York Giants. Their colors, blue, stuck with. Everything just stuck with me. It was almost like the Giants during that playoff run, during that Super Bowl, all of that just stuck on me like glue. And by the time the next season came around, I couldn't get it off of me. I wanted to know, how were the Giants doing? What were the Giants doing? Right around 1992, as a kid, I'm sitting here. I think I'm somewhere around 7, 8 years old, maybe 9. No, I think I'm 7 or 8. I had a Sega Genesis, and I got John Madden 1992. And that was another big moment for me in my young Giants fanhood days. And I know there's a lot of young kids now that probably become fan of teams and players because they play a Madden video game. And I won't say that was solely what got me to this point today, but having a video game where I could constantly play and learn the players' names, their positions at a young age really helped out a lot. I won't lie. Because obviously at that time, there was no such thing as NFL Sunday Ticket. We weren't getting all the games. I used to get on the computer and watch they'd give you a little update of what was going on, like a little play-by-play, little update. And then whatever local game was on, I'd just wait for highlights and wait for the highlights of the games. I don't know what year exactly my family got the NFL Sunday Ticket. We had gotten it somewhere. I want to say it was before I even started high school. I want to say it was late 90s. I'm honestly not really sure, but I know it was well before Eli had showed up. But anyways, obviously, anytime the Giants were on Monday Night Football or Sunday Night Football, I was there. But anyways, going back to John Madden 1992, I've just played a lot with the Giants. And so that was something that really helped carry me to maintain, understand the roster, keep the names fresh in my head, things like that. So Madden helped me out a lot when I was a younger man. I remember around 1997, the headbutt game with Gus Frerotte, Redskins Giants. That was another big game in helping me really cement my kind of plant my flag as being a New York Giants fan. I remember my dad was one of these that's you got to be in bed by 10 o'clock, no later than 10:30. My brother and I used to watch Baywatch a lot before we go to bed. It would come on at like 9:30, and we'd watch an episode of it, and then we'd go to bed. I know it's weird, but it's just what we did. But I remember that the Giants were playing the Redskins. And if you remember that game, we obviously ended in a tie. But I remember having to ask my dad multiple times. This time I was about, 1997. I was about 12, 11 or 12. Having to, ask my dad, like, hey, Dad, can I stay up? And, and he would, all right, well, let you watch another series kind of deal. Well, obviously that game went well into the night. And, but my dad let me stay up for all of it. And I just remember realizing, man, I really, really like this team. Like, I'm playing with them all the time on Madden. I really care about the outcome of these games. And it's really, it's a big deal. And it's so funny because when they went to the Super Bowl 25, as a kid, as a young male or young man, you just think that, you'll get to see him go to the Super Bowl, again soon. They made it this year, they'll make it again, very soon, right? And during this time, 1997, I've been kind of following closely for about 7 or 8 years on the computer, Madden football, reading stuff in the papers, anything I could get my hands on Giants-wise, hats, T-shirts, whatever. We didn't get a lot of stuff, and you didn't really have a lot of online shopping during that time either. I mean, a lot of the stuff that you'd get, at a mall or something was very limited. As far as New York Giants gear. But I mean, even during this time, there wasn't any Tennessee Titans gear either. So a lot of it was whatever the popular teams were, like the Cowboys and the Packers and the Niners, and a lot of my friends were those, fans of those teams. So during the 90s, for me, it wasn't odd to go into a classroom and have people be Packers fans or have a 49ers friends or Cowboys or whatever. That was there wasn't I hardly was in school for very long when it was just Titans. I remember Titans showed up when I was in 8th grade. I want to say I was 8th grade. Which was interesting, which was really hard on me. Looking back on it, it was really, really hard on me because, I've always been the person who I am. I'm a Tennessee kid through and through. There's no question about it. I love that I'm from the South. I love everything about the South, and I can tell you honestly, if you've never been to the South or you never lived here, it's honestly a great place to live. I just love it. I mean, I can't explain it. I've always been a Southern kid at heart. So when the Titans showed up, a lot of my friends were making that transition. And for me, it was really hard. And I remember they, when 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 Titans were going to the Super Bowl. This was 1999. They had showed up during 98. I want to say it was 98. They go to the Super Bowl in 99. And for me, some of my friends have made the transition. I had not wavered yet. I hadn't really wavered. I still was rooting on the Giants, and the Giants weren't a great team at that time. They weren't a Super Bowl team, but we'll get to it in just a second, what happened the following year. But so the Titans go to the Super Bowl. They lose by a yard, right? Again, I didn't waver. During that time, I enjoyed the party atmosphere that was going on. But, and I'll be honest, it was unbelievable because I was in a city that didn't have football for very long, and all of a sudden we're in the city's in the Super Bowl. And so for me, that was another key point in me maintaining my Giants fanhood, that I could have all that excitement in my face and it didn't matter because I went back home and I saw all my Giants gear and I played Madden and this is what that's what I'd already submitted myself as a Giants fan. I couldn't leave them. Another thing too is, in a lot of selfish ways, the Giants I was the only person that was a Giants fan. It was like my identity in school. He's a Giants fan. Like, I fought with Cowboy fans, and there wasn't a lot of Eagle fans. I do remember a couple Redskin fans, but I never had to deal with Eagle fans. Cowboy fans, yes, a lot of Cowboy fans, but I never. It was just my identity. I was a Giants fan. So the year later, obviously, the Giants get to go to the Super Bowl to play the Ravens. Man, I love that team. That 2000-2001 Giants team was a team I loved so much. I can't tell you how much I loved that team. I just loved that team so much. And looking back on it, they ran into a really tough Ravens team, but I was so thankful that they made it to the Super Bowl because I had begun to wonder if the Giants were ever going to go back to the Super Bowl. I'd seen the Titans go, and I'd seen all my friends get happy about it, but I wanted to feel that excitement as well. And even though they went to the Super Bowl and got crushed, I was just so happy that they made it. But I loved that team to death. That team that year, I got to watch a lot of them for some reason that year, a lot of them on TV. The jerseys at the time were relatively new. Obviously they sort of have a version of that same jersey now, but you get what I mean. The NY was new, and there was just a lot of. I also remember loving the way Giants Stadium looked during that year, and the grass. They had real grass in there, and it would get all torn up, and it was just. I can't tell you how much fun it was for me as a young man, being a teenager, watching those games and looking at the crowd and just thinking like, yeah, I'm one of you guys. Even though I don't talk like you guys, I'm one of you. Like, it was really weird for me. Because I wanted to be a part of those crowds so much. And I can't remember, somewhere around that time too, I want to say it was in 2001, or maybe it was 2001, 2002. I was walking down a hall in my high school. And on the sign was on the billboard was this piece of paper that said $1,000 Madden tournament, free to enter. It was at the Ramada Inn over by Opryland, and I think the prize was $1,000. It might have been more. It might have been something like $5,000. I can't remember, but I know it was free to enter. And to somebody who was at the time 15, 16 years old, I was like, oh, that's a lot of money. I'm good at Madden. And so I'm like, well, I want to do this, and I remember I wasn't driving at the time, so I think I was 15. If not, I was getting ready to turn 16 and didn't have my license yet. So I asked my dad. I said, "Hey, Dad, listen, there's this Madden tournament, free to enter." And, I asked him to take me to it. And he was a little reluctant at first. He was never really into the whole video game concept. But he did. He took me. And the funny thing is, and this is not a racist comment by any means, but I was pretty much the only white kid there. Everybody there was black. Which I went to mainly, the high school I went to was 75% black, which, I've always mixed with a lot of different races of people. So I've never, so when I say like I was the only white kid there, I was fine with that. It wasn't like I was uncomfortable. The environment wasn't uncomfortable. I'm just setting the scene for you guys. So during this time, I want to say the 49ers were like a Madden cheese team. And for those that don't know what Madden cheese team is, it's like a team that's really good and it's easy to win with those teams. I want to say the 49ers were the hot team, the Rams, right? That's somewhere around the time when the greatest show on turf had kind of started. Rams, 49ers. I don't know if the Falcons were yet, but I know the Ravens were a popular team as well because obviously they were really good during that time. So I'm obviously picking my Giants. Giants were not one of the better teams in the game. They were good, but they weren't like one of the better teams. So I'm playing in this tournament, and I'm winning. And I'm winning. I'm getting really close. There was a lot of, I can't remember how many. I want to say there were somewhere between 30 to 60 people that showed up for this thing. I get down to the final four, and it was double elimination. And so I ended up playing the guy that ended up winning the thing, who was extremely good. He played with the 49ers, and he was extremely good. He was so good. Probably one of the better Madden players I've ever played in my life. And I've played a lot of Madden games. And I had a good lead on. I had a lead on him at one time. I want to say somewhere like 13-6, 16-6, something like that. And he came out and he just made adjustments second half and just, I don't want to say wax that ass, but he got me. But I remember my dad ended up telling me the story. But I ended up I go play a guy later after I lost that game. I go play another guy that I'd already beaten, and but I needed to beat him to try to get back to the guy that I just lost to. And the guy had thrown. I was beating him by 4 with like 5 seconds to go in the game. He was playing with the Rams. He threw a Hail Mary from the 50-yard line all the way down, and it was either Isaac Bruce or Holt. And he had a Hail Mary on me to beat me. It was one of the most unbelievable things that ever happened to me playing Madden. I was crushed. But playing in that game, the guy who had beat me had talked to my dad for a little while. Very, very nice gentleman. And he had said to my dad, he said, one thing I can't believe what your son is doing is he's winning with the Giants. And I remember my dad, we left. I was obviously disappointed because the way I lost. I felt like I could win. And my dad had told me that story about that guy coming up and saying, he was doing it with the Giants. I took pride in that. I took a lot of pride in the fact that I went in there with my favorite team. I knew how to use them. I knew how to play with them. And I didn't worry about could I win with them or not. I just used them because that was my team. And to hear somebody who was really good at the game, was really talented, say that, I respect him for using that team. It's kind of I think it was the final nail in the coffin in me as far as maintaining the love I had for the Giants. It wasn't soon long after that. I want to say maybe a year, maybe 2. Eli Manning is drafted for the Giants. And so at that point, not that Eli had done anything, but Peyton Manning was a legend here in the state of Tennessee, because obviously he was a Tennessee Volunteer, and still to this day, Peyton Manning can't do anything wrong in the state of Tennessee. Couldn't do anything. I mean, I'm convinced that man could kill somebody and get away with it in this state. They love him that much. But I just connected with Eli a little bit through Peyton. And it just, I think Eli, I don't want to say Eli put a final, again, I think that had already been done. I don't think, for me, Phillip Rivers could have been a Giant. Ben Roethlisberger could have been a Giant. I don't think it would have changed anything. I think I would have supported those guys even more. But Eli, ended up being obviously one of my favorite players, and you guys have seen the passion I have for him. But that is a roundabout way of how I became a Giants fan. So to kind of go back, gambling, Madden video game, buying a ridiculous amount of hats and shirts and jerseys. My first Giant jersey was a Rodney Hampton jersey, a white one, blue numbers. Rodney Hampton was my first ever Giants jersey. And my mother, who's still with me, who was an absolute saint to me as a young man, she would, and again, I was telling you guys, the stores wouldn't have a ton of Giants gear, right? But she worked in the mall, and anytime, she would have friends that worked in certain stores, and anytime they would get Giants gear, she would get it for me. And you just think about how things worked out, and people that kind of helped get me along the way. Now, funny thing is, now my dad doesn't understand my passion. he doesn't get it now. I mean, he's almost, I'm raising, I've got my little boy, and he kind of sees the direction I'm taking him, and I will admit that I think that a person has to make their own choice as to who they want to support. In fairness to him, he has the option to root for the Tennessee Titans if he wants to one day. But for me, I don't have an option. It's just always been, the Giants have always been there as long as I can remember. And, looking back, I don't know if I don't know what my life would have been like without the New York Giants a part of it, without rooting for them, without caring about them. It's so crazy because, and if you're still listening at this point, I do appreciate you so much. But, you think about how your life goes from start to finish. I guess a lot of this will happen when you're on your deathbed one day, right? When you're laying down and you're getting ready to die, and you're just kind of looking back and you're thinking about all the things that you did and good things and bad. And I'm sure that we all at one point regret something in our life, right? Doing something, doing whatever. But I can honestly sit here and say to you that even through all the pain, and there's been a lot of good times too, but through it all, I don't think I will ever regret being a Giants fan. And it's hard for me now, even, because I'm, like I said, we're now in such a political world. The world is such political bullshit. And I really don't identify with what a lot of the people in New York feel politically, maybe, and I guess that would mean I identify a lot with how the people view politics in New Jersey either, but I just won't allow that crap to get in the way of a lifelong journey of being a Giants fan. And so, in a lot of ways, sure, would it have been nice if the Titans would have been here when I was a kid? Yeah. Yeah, I'd probably have season tickets. I would probably, a lot of my friends go to the games. I'd probably get season tickets. I'd probably travel a lot, or because it's easier to go to the games when they're closer to you. But for me, looking back on it, I think I've really enjoyed the life that I had. So another funny tidbit, obviously the Super Bowls, right? And I was on YouTube for both Super Bowls, so those things were kind of documented, and some of you have seen those things. But my brother, who is 2 years younger than me, I can't believe I forgot to tell this part of the story. I guess I need to learn how to do this, so I'm going to do this. But my brother's 2 years younger than me, and my dad. The funny thing is my dad, before the Titans, my dad was a Dallas Cowboys fan, which is baffling to me that he was betting on the Giants during that time when he liked the Cowboys. So my dad was actually born in Texas. And my brother just followed kind of my dad's footsteps on that as well. And this is the most radical part of this whole story. And I can't even believe I forgot to tell this, but my brother had his room and I had my room. I don't know, my dad worked in, my dad was a carpet man, and he knew a lot of people through construction and remodeling and whatnot, but he had a painter come into our house one day. And my brother wanted on it for one of his birthday gifts. I can't even remember what year this happened, but for one of his birthday gifts, he wanted my dad surprised him with a Dallas Cowboys helmet painted on one of his bedroom walls. And when I say Dallas Cowboys, I mean it looked like a legit fat head, like a big fat head of a Dallas Cowboys helmet on my brother's bedroom wall. I mean, I don't know what my dad paid for this thing, but it was actually a beautiful work of art. Like, it was very, very nice. I mean, it looked legit. I mean, it was, obviously, I didn't like it because it was a Cowboys helmet, but the point is it was very well done. I mean, I can't even, since then it's been painted over, but because my brother is nowhere near a Cowboys fan now. He's nowhere, I mean, he's hardly even a Titans fan. He doesn't, nobody in my family shares the same loyalty that I do. It's actually kind of different. But my dad, he's since become a Titans fan as well. He doesn't really follow the Cowboys, but for me, it was those rivalries of against the Cowboys and against the Eagles and the Redskins. It wasn't until YouTube that I felt the Eagles rivalry. I've always felt the Cowboys rivalry. And I always kind of felt the Redskins. But the Eagles one, I'd always heard the stories about 90 miles apart, all this and that. But I didn't feel it until I came on YouTube. Which is another great thing that I'm happy when I joined YouTube, because it just improved my passion for the Giants. It really did. And so, for me, it's only made me a better fan joining YouTube. But I actually begged my dad. I was like, "Oh man, you got to get. I want a Giants one painted. I want a Giants helmet painted in my room." And for whatever reason, he wouldn't get it done. And so, but going back, my dad, gambling, and Madden football was three big key components of helping me become the Giants fan that I am. And a lot of players over the years I really recognized with, that I just fell in love with. Michael Strahan, Lawrence Taylor, Eli, Jesse Armstead, Keith Hamilton, Jason Sehorn, Jeremy Shockey, Tiki Barber. I loved Kerry Collins. Oh, I loved Kerry Collins. I remember Kerry Collins. I've only cried a couple times when it came to the Giants. One of them was the playoff game against the 49ers when the 49ers came back and beat us. Obviously, Terrell Owens. If you remember Michael Strahan pointing to the scoreboard at Terrell Owens. I cried like a baby after that game. That was the year after the Super Bowl. I believe that was the 01-02 playoffs. I cried like a baby after that game. And Kerry Collins and the Giants got beat to the Ravens. And I remember hearing an audio from some clip where Jim Fossil and Kerry Collins had embraced. And I remember Kerry Collins said to Jim Fossil, Jim Fossil said, "Hey man, it's all right, man. Gave a good fight." And Kerry Collins had said something along the lines of, "I'll live to fight another day." And I don't know why that made me emotional. And actually, I just lied because I cried 3 times. The other time that I cried when it came to the Giants was I didn't cry after the Giants won the Super Bowls, although I was very happy for Eli. Very happy for Eli, especially the 18-0 one. But when Strahan sacked Brady in the Super Bowl, and then he did this flex thing. He was flexing. He was like pointing and he did his flex. I don't know why, but I became very emotional in that moment. That moment was one of the most emotional moments I've ever had being a Giants fan because Strahan was a part of. Because you got to remember when Strahan showed up, he was back end of when LT was coming out and Strahan was coming in. So that was a big transition period of building me as a Giants fan. And Strahan had completed the task of what I was asking for as a fan and a kid. All I wanted to do, as soon as he came to the team, I wanted to, I'd already submitted, that I was a fan in that early 90s, but then I wanted, as we got to the late 90s and the early 2000s, I wanted the Giants to win it again. I just wanted to win one more time in my lifetime. I mean, looking back, there was a time if you'd asked me like in 1998, I would have said, just let the Giants win one Super Bowl and I'm good. It's crazy to think about that now because I want way more than just one, but there was a time when I was just give me one Super Bowl. Just give me one more before I die. But when he had that moment, it was just emotional for me because it really completed the task of where I started to watch a player throughout his whole career. Those great battles with John Runyon and those nights of staying, asking my dad to stay up or I had a Michael Strahan 92, a white 92 jersey was one of the my white Michael Strahan 92 might have been my second jersey I'd ever had after my Rodney Hampton. Michael Strahan might have been my second jersey. And so it was Strahan was always a part. It just seemed like Strahan was always a part of the Giants. And so for him to have that moment, it almost felt like, I don't know. I can't explain it, but it was a very emotional moment for me. And I was very happy for him. But yeah, that is the long version of why I'm a New York Giants fan. Weird, huh? And I've been able to go to several games throughout the years now. And every time I go, I remember the first time I went with Mitos, 1966, and Nicole. Some of you guys have seen Nicole. And the very first home game was at Giants Stadium for me. And it was against the Eagles. It was on my birthday. I think I was 22. I think I was 22. And it was snowing. It was really cold. And I remember not trying to talk a whole lot. I didn't want to talk a whole lot because I didn't want people to hear my southern accent. I just wanted to blend in. I just wanted to fit in. And I didn't want Mitos or Nicole to see how I felt, but I remember I walked away from them and I walked down as close as I could get to the field and walked down one of the aisles. And I just kind of stood there. And this was before the game had started. I was acting as if I had a ticket down in one of those seats, but I really didn't. I was just walking down as close as I could get. And we had seats in the lower bowl, but we were backed up a little bit, kind of where it was where we had coverage. But I remember walking as close as I could in Giants Stadium and just taking it all in. I still remember that moment to this day of just standing there, being amongst the Giant fans, taking it in, and thinking back of when I was a kid, watching the Giants on TV, seeing the fans, seeing that early 2000 team, especially that NFC Championship game against the Minnesota Vikings when they won 41-0, and just wanting to be a part of that crowd so bad. But I remember this when I went to the my first home game. I believe it was 2008. So that was about 7-8 years later. And just thinking in that moment of what that was like. And I may have stood there for 20 to 30 seconds, but it was much needed for me. It really was. So, but anyways, I hope you guys have enjoyed this little fan, or this walk down memory lane of how I became a fan. And I know it's not perfectly formatted and how things came, but being a fan of certain of anything isn't ever going to be perfect. I don't think, but I can honestly say that as a man now, I will always be a New York Giants fan for the rest of my life. I just, there's no way that I'll ever not be a Giants fan. There's nothing that could ever happen that would take me away from rooting on the Giants. It's too embedded in me. It's too deep. It's to a point that I can't take it out. And so, those of you that are Giant fans that are from the area, New York, New Jersey, and that you've taken me in, and you have accepted me, and you've accepted my channel, nobody on YouTube will ever appreciate it more than me. And that's the truth. It really is. So, I hope you guys have enjoyed this little story time with Pizzle. If you guys liked it, let me know. I'll do more. But I hope that this kind of gets the answer out there, and I hope this is something you guys want me to do more of. Because if it is, I'll be more than happy to do it. You guys take care, and as always, go Big Blue.